Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to Hillwood. I'm delighted to welcome you here at Hillwood. It's a wonderful to see both familiar and new faces for this program today. So my name is Wilfried Seisler. I'm the Deputy Director and Chief Curator here at Hillwood, and I use the pronouns he and him. As we begin, I would like to take a moment to gratefully acknowledge the Nakochunk, also documented as the Anacostion, the Piscataway, and the Pamunkey. These are the native peoples on whose ancestral lands Hillwood stands, as well as the diverse and vibrant native communities who make their homes near us today. We are very pleased to have partnered with the James Renwick Alliance for Craft for this program today, which is part of their Distinguished Artist Series. This partnership is a wonderful connection for us to Hillwood's actually current exhibition, Class, Art, Beauty, and Design, of which I am the curator. The exhibition brings together pieces from Marjorie Post's collection and put them in dialogue with pieces by contemporary artists, and Debora Moore is one of the artists featured in the exhibition. Her wonderful works connect so well with Post's glass collection, but also with her fascination with orchids. We are honored to have Debora Moore. Thank you so much for being here today, and to have this opportunity to learn more about her artistic process. So we'll get some time in the exhibition today, and I hope you will return and share it with your friends. Since you are here today, I will assume that you will enjoy maybe our next programs regarding our glass exhibition, such as on October 10, a virtual studio tour with Bess Lipman, an artist who is also featured in the exhibition in the mention, and a conversation with Joyce J. Scott and Tim Tate, both artists also featured in the exhibition on October 17th. You can register today at the desk outside the theater for these events or visit our website, hillwoodmuseum.org, if you are interested. Also, I encourage you, if you are not yet, to become members of Hillwood as well. I will now give you an overview of what we will be doing today, our program. So after Debora Moore's presentation, our head of adult audiences, Katie McCarty, will come to the podium. So after the clap, everything, please don't leave. Wait for her to come here and tell you what will be next. And there will be also some time for some questions that you may have for Debora. After that, we will actually split the group in two. One will go with Debora and our head of director of horticulture to have a conversation around orchids and flora, and one will go with me, and I will lead this group to the exhibition space where I'll be in station to answer any question you may have about the glass exhibition. And then we will swap both groups, and so the program should end around noon. Today, and then of course if you want to stay until 5, we are open until 5, you can explore further and enjoy Hillwood, our cafe, our shop, everything you would like. Now that we have a sense of our exciting program today, it's now my pleasure to give the floor to Rebecca Ravenel, President of the James Renwick Alliance for Craft, who will tell us a bit more about the organization, and Debora Moore. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. As Wilfried said, I am Rebecca Ravenel. I'm the board chair of the James Renwick Alliance for Craft. Our mission is to foster appreciation, connoisseurship, and support for American craft, and we do that through a number of events, talks, trips, and tours. And for more information on our upcoming events, please visit our website. We're so happy to be co-presenting this program today with Hillwood Estate Museum and Gardens in conjunction with their stunning exhibit, Glass Art, Beauty, Design. I'd like to thank the team at Hillwood, including Kate Market, Wilfried Zeisler, Jessica Bonilla, and Katie McCarthy. I want to express my special appreciation of Katie and of our own Jamie Ann Jacobin for expertly coordinating many details of a complex event. Today I'm here in my role as the chair of the Distinguished Artist Series. 4 times each year, we invite a notable American craft artist to give a presentation on their career and process. Our presenter today is glass artist extraordinaire Debora Moore. Earlier this week, Debora gave a wonderful virtual talk which highlighted parts of her career. Today, she continues telling us more about her work and process. Debora excels at creating forms that capture the beauty and grandeur of nature, infused with her unique personal expression. With a special interest in orchids, she's traveled the world studying her subjects deeply so that she can translate this into stunning, powerful sculptures. Deborah has taught and worked all over the world, including at Pilchuck as the colorist for Dale Chihuly's team, and as the first female and African American resident artist at the famed Abate Zanetti on Murano Island. We're thrilled to have her here today to give some insight into creating her virtuosic work. Welcome, Debora Moore.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. Let's see. So I'd like to start off by thanking, there's so many wonderful people to thank. Can you hear me better now? Okay. Thank you to Jamie Ann Jacobin. Well, I should start off by thanking the James Renwick Alliance for the craft and the James Renwick Artist Series. I feel so fortunate to be a part of this and to be one of the first presenters of the season. Also, I'd like to thank Rebecca Ravenel and Dr. Wilfred Zeisler and the Hillwood Museum and Gardens, and Jessica Bonilla, the Director of Horticulture. I deeply appreciate the level of support and enthusiasm from my work, and I'm honored to be with you in person today. So for the next 30 minutes, I'm going to share orchid details. I don't know if you saw the first presentation online, but this is kind of a continuation of that. And the first section will be orchid details, and then I will go into process. And we have a couple of exciting videos to share with you. It's really just the process of making an orchid in a hot shop. It's a little action-packed, and your head will kind of have to move side to side as if you're watching tennis or something. But I think you can figure it out. So with that, I say welcome. So the first few slides are orchid details. So this is a Brachia spider orchid, and it's part of the host series. I love pods, and I like the color purple. I take artistic license to use any color that I want to use, and I add pods where there are no pods. But there are pods in orchids, the vanilla bean, Vanilla panifolia. Most people don't know that vanilla comes from an orchid, and it's Vanilla panifolia, and that's the little pod that grows down that we get vanilla beans from. I also like the light airiness of the flower in juxtaposition to the heavy trunk behind it and all the texture. So this is host epidendrum, and some of you, this might look familiar because it was in the first slide lecture. I include this because, once again, I'm working with texture, moss, and lichen, and the ethereal flowers that contrast the heavy trunk. So Blue Lady Slipper is also part of the host series, and I decided to show the whole image on this. And this is a great example as to why I like to work with glass. It transmits and reflects light perfectly. Glass is a frozen liquid, and you're able to freeze at the moment while it's hot and moving and liquid. And if you are able to see something, you can stop the process at that point and capture that moment. And that's what I did with the leaves coming off of the plant coming off of the host. A pink lady slipper. And so again, I take artistic license to add Italian techniques with the lip wrap around the sack of the lady slipper, the pod. I like to work with colors that react to each other, that create the color striation that you see in the petals. purple lady slipper, and I just love purple. I mean, there's no deep explanation here. It's one of my favorite orchids are lady slippers. And this is a branch series, not the host series, so I made a branch, and again, using texture of moss and lichen. Now, this is part of the plant series, so I made several plants for this series, and this is a Phragmiopedium. And again, I'm using colors that react with each other to get the color striation in this particular plant. Paphiopedilum, and this piece this is more true to life size, and I really wanted to go with natural colors, and so I decided to keep with the greens and the neutral tones, and just to focus on the center of the orchid. I really like this one. We have vermilion lady slippers, so as you can see through the details, I really like lady slippers. It's my favorite orchid. Blue lady slipper. This represents my favorite color combination, which is blues and greens together. And I've taken artistic license to add a pod to this, where in nature there would be no pod and it wouldn't be blue. So we are going to move to process. And so we'll start, well, maybe I should ask and stop for a moment before we, and I don't think we discussed this, but before we go into process, maybe you might have a few questions while it's fresh about the details that we just saw. Is that okay, Rebecca? It's okay?
Sure.
Are there any questions? We'll wait for, she'll bring you the microphone.
You obviously do not attempt to make, to duplicate these as the Blaschkes did. They really made glass as models. So how far do you move away from the real flower? So how far do you take the artistic license?
As far as I can, to be honest with you. But I can explain that because the Boschgla collection, or the glass flowers of Harvard, or there's different names for this collection, but what they used was lamp working, pigmentation, wires, and they made true scientific models so that you can study them in different universities and places to study orchids. I am complete opposite of that. These are just interpretations of what I see and what, I click the button, and what I am trying to say with my work. So, of course, I'm not going to try to compete with Mother Nature. All I do when I go out in the field and I'm studying orchid, I'm trying to capture the essence of the orchid and what it is that I'm seeing out in nature. I don't usually take a camera with me, because if I take a camera, then I just take a picture and all you see is a picture of it, but you can't really capture the feeling at the moment. And so I sketch out what I see in nature and what parts I want to emphasize on it. And so I move completely away from the true botanical structure of the orchid and make my interpretations of what I'm seeing. Okay? All right, so we'll move. Are there any other questions about details? Yes.
Well, I think I'm.
Oh, wait, she's going to bring you the.
Am I out?
Just use the mic.
Sit down also. But I didn't get that instruction. I'm sure you discussed on the Zoom call the relationship between the orchid and the host.
Okay.
But there may be some people here who don't understand that.
Okay. So should I go back to a picture of a host? Okay, let's see. There, we'll use that one, for example. So what I'm doing really is putting in a whole lot of information into this one sculpture, and I'm asking you as a viewer to kind of see that information as one sculpture. So orchids attach themselves to trees or rocks, and they're epiphytic, they're epiphytes. They don't absorb any nutrients or water from the tree or the host that they're attached to, and they collect the water hydroponically from the air around them. And so I'm making the sculpture the host, and then I'm attaching the plants and the orchid to that. And I'm trying to kind of, it's my interpretation of when I'm out in the forest and I'm looking for orchids, they're always attached to a tree or to a rock, and I'm cramming all this information in this one sculpture. Did I make that clear?
Yes, that's great.
Okay, so this next slide, it's not a slide, it's a video. And we're going to move into my hot shop. And this is the beginning stages, the making of an orchid in the hot shop. And there'll be plenty of time for questions after we get through all of the process shots.
Towards the back.
So we'll just continue on. And now we're going into the finishing stages of actually making the flower. So you see how pliable the glass is when it's warm. You can move it around in shape and form. What I'm using here is an oxypropane torch. It's about 4,000 degrees, and it adds just a little extra heat than a regular torch. So the next slide is I'm finishing it up. My assistant Eva is heating up the flower. So I'm stemming the flower up in this part of the process. We're flashing it. So it might sound like I'm barking out orders, but in the moment you have to. My poor nephew's at the top of this ladder. Okay, now we're going to finish this up, and this is where it gets crazy. It's too hot, so I have to hand it back to him. So you have to be very precise in everything that you do. When I see this part, my heart goes. My husband filmed this, and he always turns the camera, and he's just.
Careful of those hoses.
Put the torches away and stand by the box. Quickly, Sean. Okay. Eva, go ahead and pull. Yep. Little water on the very tip. There we go. It's gonna pop.
Now it goes into the needler. Oh, my husband. So, when we first had talked about me coming here, they wanted me to do a demo. And instead of a demo, you've got the full process here. So the next series of slides that we're going to see is the making of wisteria, which is part of Force of Nature show that was at the James Renwick Museum of American Craft here in Washington, D.C. Also at the Tacoma Art Museum is where it started. And so I'm going to show you this because this was one of the most difficult things, and it taught me a lot, and I will explain as we go. So usually we start with a drawing or the concept, and this is just a little sketch. There's no more videos here, but I don't think. So this is just a little sketch, and I'm trying to figure out the armature. And so I'm just literally using a metal rod, sticking it inside of glass and making little sketches to work with my metal worker. And also, I usually start off with a wire sculpture as well to show the whole form in wire, and then we can work from there. So in order to make a wisteria, I can only suggest to the viewer through color, shape, and form. There's no way I can make a wisteria plant true to life. With every petal, it would take me years to do that, and I would go crazy, literally, to do that. So through form, shape, and color, I developed a technique using marini. It's Italian pulling threads of glass or thick rods of glass and then chopping it up. And I turned it into petals. So the marinis in the front, and then towards the back, I have turned them into petals. And then the next slide, this is called a garage. And a garage is a tool that we use in the hot shop to park the glass while we're waiting to pick it up and reuse it again. The temperature of the garage is around 950 degrees to 1,000 degrees. And we're able to pull it out and put it back and forth, and we're able to reuse it hot while we're making it. So now, I spent weeks with that process that I just showed you on making petals. And this is a story about perseverance, one of my lessons. This was a total disaster. By the way, I want to share with you, this is a total disaster. I ended up having to cut off the whole chunk of glass along with the kiln shelf and put it in the annealer and put it away. But I save everything through my process so that I can see if I'm progressing or not. And so the next slide shows that I'm getting a little bit further in my process. and I'm really excited, and I think that I can continue on with it. And I have hope with this. So it's like, it's going to work, it's going to work. And so now we get to the finished product from the total disaster, and I'm so happy that I'm at this stage now. So the wisteria and all the stones, all the trees are based on natural stones. And I go to different quarries to pick out which stone that I want. And oftentimes this is the most difficult part of the process, because when I go to large quarries to pick a stone, I just want one stone. And there are guys in big trucks and stuff all lined up ready to get a ton of stones, and the men, and there's only one woman that I've met, and she was really wonderful, crane operator. They're like, ma'am, we don't have time for this. And I'm just like, I really want to see that stone up there in a pile. And then the crane operator comes over, picks out the stone, lifts it up, and then twirls it around. And I'm standing there going, no, that's not right. And then we have to go to the part where do I want to drill the hole and do the fabrication of the stone? And then I have to step away and look at it, and they have to mark it with chalk or tape or whatever. And they're like, ma'am, you can't keep changing where you want the hole. And I'm just like, it has to be perfect. You don't understand, this is for my artwork. It's not for a garden. It's for my artwork. And so I thought I'd show you me climbing a mountain of stones and what I go through to pick the stones out. So, this is actually a video. And this is my assistant, Eric. And so we're practicing with clear glass. And every beginning part of my sculpture, we blow into the stone.
Stop.
So that
Blow.
the first piece
Stop.
matches the stone
Blow.
exactly the way it's supposed to sit on top of the stone.
All right.
So we put that on a Lazy Susan, so I can, drives my assistant crazy, but I can see it from all directions while it's spinning around. Every tree that I make has a metal armature on the inside that supports the glass. And structurally, it's definitely needed, and it's just part of the process. So I thought I'd include this to show you the metal armature inside. This is building of a trunk, and as you can see, it's on top of the stone, and I've already blown on that rock, or I've had Eric do it. And then we build up, and calipers are my friends, my best friends, and I calibrate every section so that it keeps fitting and building up as we go. At this point, I'm having fun climbing on the sculpture, and then I have a better vantage point to see just how it's fitting together and to making sure that everything is structurally sound before it goes to the structural engineer. I always have a structural engineer that will help throughout the process to make sure that it can stand in a public place and that it's safe. And actually, it also gives you a perspective on size and scale. This is a magnolia tree. That's one of the 4 trees that I made. And I building this in my shop so you can kind of see scale as well, because it takes up the whole shop and everybody gets mad at me like, you're taking up all this space, but it's just part of the process. This is the final close-up of the wisteria, which I shared with you the process. Wisteria contains over 1,000 petals. So, more than any other series I've created, spanning 30 years as a glass sculptor, this part of the process taught me patience. And thank you.
Thank you.
Don't go away.
Oh, Okay.
It's time for more questions.
Okay.
So first of all, thank you so much. That was fascinating. I think I was so nervous about that 8-foot flower stem. But if there are more questions now that you've seen more of the process, if you have more questions, please raise your hand and a microphone will come around. Thanks.
So your perseverance with listerias, was it the color purple that motivated you there as well?
No, not really. At my home, my whole backyard is wisteria. And for years, I've been watching them, the whole process, and from the start of the pod on a wisteria to the buds, and then the blooming of it. And I always wanted to make a wisteria. So I stand in front of it or underneath it's so large, our home's really old. And I love the scent of wisteria as well. It's got a crisp, clean kind of linen scent to it. It's not pungent, but if you're around enough of them, you can capture the scent of wisteria. So I was totally inspired by the wisteria at my home. And then purple, yes, it's a light lavender colored purple, but I was going crazy at first, literally trying to make it like a wisteria. And then I thought, no, I'm just going to kind of like impressionist painting or something, just kind of capture the color and the essence of the orchid. So they are purple, and I do love purple, but that wasn't my inspiration.
How many people do you have working in your studio? And are they all relatives?
Well, the only relative I really had working with me was my nephew. He's a great cold worker, and he'll do exactly what I ask him to do without arguing with me or asking too many questions. Yes, Auntie Debbie, I will do that. So that makes me very happy in the process, in the moment. But oftentimes I'll have 5 people. I have a bubble starter who will start the bubble and start the process for me. I'll have somebody setting up all of the colors, and then I'll have 2 assistants. You see how close the flames are to my hands? It's really important that you work with somebody familiar and that knows the process so that I don't get burned too many times. And then the oxy propane torch is 4,000 degrees, so if it were to just flash by my hand, it burns deep down. It's a 3rd-degree burn. So you have to be really very careful. So I usually have somebody who just works the torches and are used to getting underneath my arm, coming up underneath my arm, and then behind my glove, and torching different areas so close to my body during the process.
I have 1,000, so I'll give you just a couple. Can you talk a little bit more about safety equipment? Did you have to heat the stone before you blow the glass on it? What about the coefficient of expansion between the metal and the glass? And where's your studio, and is it open? I have a lot more, but let's start with those.
Okay, I'm going to back up. My studio's in Seattle, Washington. It was my husband's and I's studio, but my husband has since passed, so now it's just my studio. I have been working out of that studio for 30 years plus, and the coefficient of expansion, the metal is not attached hot, but there is one metal that will work, and that's copper, and that's just about, it has the same as glass. And there is no copper. The metal's made separately, and when I started this process of using an armature, I had researched and found a wonderful metal worker, and we were trying to figure out the process together. So who goes first? Do I make the glass, or does he make the metal, and I make the glass to go over the metal? And we started off both ways, and I decided that I make the glass, he makes the metal to fit the glass, and that seems to be the best way to go about it. Did I answer all your questions?
Safety equipment?
Oh, safety equipment. Yes. So you notice I have a glove on, a leather glove. I have an apron. Oftentimes I wear a leather apron. The people who were boxing, they wear face shield and large loading gloves so that they can load it in the annealer. An annealer is an oven that brings the glass temperature down slowly and relieves the stress. And it's at about 950 degrees. And so it's safety, safety, safety is the most important thing. We are working with such dangerous temperatures. So I'm always looking out after people who are working for me. Their safety is very important to me. If the shop gets above 115 degrees, I have to shut it down. And we usually hose it down with water and cool it down, and then we can start again. But during the summer times, I will start at about 5 in the morning, and we finish at around 12:31 for safety purposes. If I have too much gear on, I can't move quickly enough. And with these processes that I've been using, you have to be able to move fast and quick. And you really have to understand the medium to be able to pull that bubble all the way out. And it's hollow, it's not solid. If it were solid, it would snap. But having the air, the tube, it makes it that much stronger. And so I'm able to flash it back and forth. And then we wear safety glasses for protection of not just in case it breaks, but also to keep your eyes protected from the oxyacetylene torch, because that is so bright it could really hurt your eyes. And then in front of the glory hole is really bright, so you want to protect your eyes from that.
Debora, it's so great to see you in the other Washington, as I say. I've known you for years, and I'm so surprised I've never asked you this question. When I think about Dale Chihuly, he talks often about his mother's garden and how that really influenced his love of color and even his exploration of color. What was it for you that set you on this path of sort of flora and fauna? Was it a childhood memory, also a parent or something, or was that sort of more later in life discovery?
No, so I grew up on different Air Force bases. With my father was in the Air Force, and it was always hectic and full of airplanes. And when you're in school, they break the sound barrier, so the windows were made of metal mesh in between the glass to keep it from shattering. And I just couldn't stand all the confusion, and I'd often go out into the forest or the desert. We were stationed in Tucson, Arizona. I walked through the desert looking at cactus flowers, and just somewhere where it's peaceful and quiet. And my grandmother's garden actually was very inspiring to me, and I could go out and just be quiet and peaceful and study these incredible creations that I see. Forest.
Hi, I just have a quick question that precedes her question. What was your initial spark to glass?
Okay, I started as a ceramist, and I saw glass blowing, and it was like the perfect next step for me. When you're pulling pots, you're working vertically, and it's spinning, constantly spinning. But with glass blowing, it's horizontal, and it's constantly spinning. So it made a nice, smooth transition for me to kind of do this instead of this and pulling it up. I can take paper, and oftentimes you can shape and form glass with just wet paper. And I like my paper really thin so that I can feel it between my fingers, and I can scooch and shape and form it with that process. And so during the 80s when I started, there weren't very many women blowing glass. And I went into a shop and they said, oh, women don't blow glass. And I was like, oh, well okay, so it kind of made me want to do it more. So I get that. You're welcome.
I loved how you spoke about the essence of capturing the wisteria as opposed to the photographic likeness of it. And so I was just wondering if you ever recheck on the essence, or do you stick with the essence that you originally felt, or do you go back to the garden and look at it again?
Sometimes, depending on, I usually don't start a process or a piece until I have thoroughly researched it. And that includes a lot of testing. I do a lot of color testing before I start a project because we want to see if it's compatible. So I blend a lot of colors, and sometimes some colors are not compatible with other colors, and you don't know until the end when everything cracks. And that has happened to me. When I was making one of the trees, there was just one color out of all the colors, and everything was breaking. It was costing me tens of thousands of dollars, and I couldn't figure it out. So then I had to get a polariscope, test each individual color, and then I had to test them all together one at a time, and it turned out to be 161. That 161 had to be removed, but it's a color that I have been using in my process for over 25 years. And so it's kind of tricky. So I don't start until I've completely gone through the entire process, the testing. I've already captured what I feel is the essence in my drawings and my notes. So very rarely do I go back into the forest to check out something. So I've already captured that moment, and I've sketched it out, and then I go from there.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your glass and reactivity? I'm not familiar with glass used for blowing. Did you always use the same glass, or have you changed furnace glass? And the reactivity is something that is fascinating.
Okay, we'll start with that. So certain colors, when you put them together, they'll react with each other because I'm controlling it, but they don't really like to be next to each other. So it will turn like a whitish color to maybe black and create striations in the piece because it really doesn't like to be in that next to that color. But I can control it now, and I use it to make color striations with that. I hope that answers your question about. Well, then I have to get into batch and the recipe for batch, or cullet, which is chunks of glass. We melt it in our furnace at about 2,400 degrees, and it becomes liquid. And then we gather the glass from there on a blowpipe that's about 4.5 feet long. About the fattest part of it is about 2 inches on the head, where the bubble comes out at the end. And we just gather and build from there. To making the bits, it's the same way, except for just a smaller rod that doesn't have air running through it. I just gather, and then my assistants will. Do you ever think about like paint by numbers? You guys remember that? I used to love that when I was a kid. It's paint by numbers, but now all the drawings are numbered because colors in glass. You don't say red. I would want red. You put 141, which is a transparent red, or if you wanted an opaque red, it would be 83. You learn to memorize the numbers of the colors, and that's how you're able to communicate. So a drawing that I might put up in the hot shop might look like paint by color numbers. Did I answer your question?
What kind of glass? You're making your own glass, or are you using like Gaffer or Reichenbach?
Those are colors. So Gaffer, Reichenbach, and Zimmerman were 3 famous Jewish families that created these colors. And so you can get Kugler, but some of it might not be compatible with Zimmerman. And actually Zimmerman is no longer a color. So you just buy those colors from the company, and then you add them to clear glass. And clear glass is what we melt in our furnace. So lamp workers, they would use a rod of glass, and then they heat it on a torch, and they can manipulate and change the form as they go, and then it freezes, and then they move to the next part, it freezes. when I'm working with hot glass from the furnace, it's all one homogeneous heat, and everything's moving at once, and everything is hot. So it's a little bit different of a process. There's fusing and slumping glass. There's different ways of using glass, but I use glass from the furnace, and then I add colors to that. And oftentimes I use Kugler colors. My favorite, though, is a Zimmerman, but it's no longer being made.
There's a question at the back.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about your cold process? So I was looking at the pods and seeing that lovely satin finish on them, and wondered also about the hosts, because those are not showing up as glossy as if they just come out of the hot process.
Okay, so we'll talk about the cold process. So when I make the host, it's made on the pipe, and it's one whole piece. So when you saw that one example, you can see that comes in handy, because he can hold it there and I can direct him where I want it to be cut, and then he batutos the edge, which batuto is an Italian term for hammering, and so it looks like it's hammered and chiseled out. So that's how we create the relief of the back, so that it now becomes more tree-like. The surface becomes satiny because I use acid at the end of the process. So I take away that glassy finish with hydrofluoric acid.
Are there any more questions?
Oh, God, tits.
So I have a combined question and a comment, because I've had the great fortune during my lifetime to see some of the greatest maestros around the world at work, doing very complex pieces with great skill. And part of being a maestro is having the charisma to actually run a coordinated team. But you're one of the first women maestros.
Mm-hmm.
How did they react to you in Italy at a time when there were no women blowing glass there traditionally? How did they respond to you being there and being so incredibly good?
At first, they didn't like it. And it was actually becoming dangerous, because Murano, the guy who runs the hot shop, it's a government position. He's in charge of making, or city, he's in charge of making sure that the glass furnace is full, and that the tanks are safe and full, and that everything that we need is there for us. So the first week I was there, Pietro wasn't taking care of things, and he wasn't listening to me until I can get a little, So I had to get a little testy with him, and I said, "Basta, I'm not going to work anymore unless you take care of this," because I had to. Safety is the most important thing, and the torch blew up while this young lady from England was helping me, and he fixed it with a little bit of, what's the word? He wasn't moving quickly enough for me. And so when I said I wasn't working, we had a talk, and then we fixed it. And now when I go, okay, so when you go to Murano, I think Murano's still closed. Is it still cold now?
I'm not sure. It comes and goes. There's been a lot of problem with, the war in Ukraine has had a huge effect on it, and Russian gas supplies and embargoes, and just the incredible, even before that, the incredible cost had quadrupled in the fall, right before the Ukraine war happened, and that just put everyone out of business for quite a while. So some of the furnaces are lit up again.
Oh, that's good to
but
hear.
It did a lot of economic damage to them, obviously.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say is that in my earlier stages, my husband and I, when we first got married, we went to Murano for our honeymoon in Venice, and the maestros would welcome me in and tell me to sit behind the bench next to them, and I would sit there and watch what they're doing. Now when I go into the hot shops, everybody stops working, they put their tools down, they come over, they say hi, nobody does anything because they don't want me to see.
The maestra has arrived.
Maestra, oh, ciao, bello, ciao. I was like, okay, we stop working, we have the coffee and this and that. Nobody wants me to see what they're doing, which is okay with me because I don't want them in my shop either.
So most people know Lino Tagliapietra, and he's considered the great maestro,
Right.
in this time. But Lino also has incredible admiration for you because you can do everything that Lino can do, and I've seen you do things that he can't do. So
I wouldn't say that.
no, I've seen it all for a long time. So I just want to say congratulations. You've done something that no woman has yet done, which is become one of the prima maestras in the world.
Thank you, Toots. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. That is the perfect end note. I mean, I don't know what else you could say after that. But thank you so much for taking us through your process and your beautiful work.